Hey, Dean here. I'm on Lower Fish Creek today. It's early May. Sun is shining. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. At the start of this video today, I've got Scott from Scotty's FlyShop in Spanish Fork. Had a chance to visit his shop, a small shop there in Spanish Fork. Got a few comments from Scott on different fly patterns and different places to fish down in this part of the state. And interesting thing about his fly shop, it's small, but all the flies there he ties himself, so that's pretty cool. And then, as I mentioned, I'm here on Lower Fish Creek today. This river up to a few years ago was one of my very favorite places to go. Big browns, big rainbows, tiger trout. It was awesome. Lots of different bugs hatching. It was a real fun place to fish. It got dewatered a couple times over the last few years when they're working on the dam and different things. It's one of those rivers where they don't have a guaranteed water flow, to the best of my knowledge, so things get tough and the fish basically get shut off from most of the water here, so it's really hurt the fishery. Last time I was here, it was mainly chubs in this river, and I had a real hard time finding any trout. So I'm going to go today and see if I can find some nice trout, see if there's some still in the river. Kind of reminds me of an episode of Finding Bigfoot. I'm going to go out here and see if I can find some bigger fish, see if they're still in this river. I assume there's still got to be some fish of good size here. So going to go fishing. I'll take a few pictures. Whether I have good luck or bad luck, I'll be putting this on the web and let you know what's happening on Lower Fish Creek. I've got Scott Masters here today from Scott's Fly Shop in Spanish Fork. Scott's kind enough to take a minute and give us a little info here today. One thing to know about Scott's Fly Shop, it's not real big, but every fly here Scott hand ties that he sells. So everything is geared to what the local fish are eating. Anyway, Scott, what would you suggest as far as maybe a place to fish this time of year? It's the 1st of May, and a couple different patterns that you would suggest, a couple dry fly patterns this time of year.
Well, good. I'm glad you brought up dry flies too, because even though I realize nymphs are so effective and so many fish with nymph patterns, I've personally been a dry fly guy. And for those of you who may be old timers that may remember Doug Hoops, formerly the Fly Fishers Den in Provo there, ran that during the 80s and 90s and in Pleasant Grove as well. But he was my mentor, and so he was a dry fly purist, and I've kind of followed that pattern myself as well. And but right now, you know, the dry fly patterns I'd recommend is blue wing olives, and we're getting. I mean, now it's May 1st, in fact, today, and so usually in May, even a lot of times I'll have quite a bit of success with tan elk hair caddis's. That's probably my #1 go-to fly right there. I just love it, and I think over the years it's proved to be the #1 fly in my fly box. But also there's patterns too. I've really become quite partial to a blue dun, which is very, very good, besides the blue wing olives. And I think Adams is always a go-to pattern too as far as dry flies are concerned. Probably a little early, I would say, as far as PMDs are concerned, and they're more of a summer fly. But those are my personal favorites right there. So probably blue wing olive. I'll start fishing with elk hair caddis's too, and especially since this year there's not been a lot of runoff like there is in so many of the previous years that we've had. And it'll make it really good as far as that's concerned too. So we won't have quite the muddy high waters so late in the season like we have in previous years. And so a lot of the reservoirs are full as well, and so I think it's going to be an extended fishing season because of that. And as far as locally here, I am in Spanish Fork, so some of the go-to streams for me would be Diamond Fork, although you have to be careful on Diamond Fork because boy, it can go from clear to muddy in no time at all. And so keep in contact with me on that. Once again, I'm in Spanish Fork here, and give me a call on that because I pretty well get daily reports on that. and from first-hand experience, since I'm only about 9 miles from Diamond Fork. Hobble Creek is another really, really good area. It's always good, consistent flow. It's quite clear most all the time, and not a lot of water there. I don't think as much as there has been in previous decades, in the 80s and 90s, but still the same. It is a place where you can go and catch fish as well. And I predominantly have used dry flies there as well, but every now and again I'll put on a nymph, you know, and for you nymph fishermen, I realize there's probably more of you than possibly the dry fly guys. But Hobble Creek's a really good place to go, and of course the Provo. Everybody's aware of the Provo, both lower and middle on that, and that's always a great, great favorite place as far as the state is concerned. And boy, is Fish Creek this year, Lower Fish Creek, is kind of in trouble, I think, a little bit because of the regulation of the water flows, so that's kind of jeopardized that a little bit. Another area you might think about is Six Water as well, that eventually ends up, of course, as part of the Diamond Fork drainage. And so Six Water there might be a really good area to try as well. And it is a little higher in elevation, but once again, we're not having a lot of the runoffs we have in previous years, so it ought to be good as well. So those would be, well, in fact, I've even talked to fishermen that have fished the Spanish Fork River, you know, right here in town, from the Spanish Oaks Golf Course area on west. And so even though I normally don't fish that a lot, there's been some reports on that of some fishing there as well, so you may give that a try. So as far as local waters are concerned, that's pretty well, I think, as far as this area is concerned, a good area to go.
Well, Scott, thanks so much. Scott's Fly Shop, it's on Center Street here in Spanish Fork. Come take a look at the flies he ties. Pretty awesome stuff. Thanks, Scott. Just thought I'd give you a glimpse of what this river looks like once you walk for about a half an hour or so. 20 minutes for most of you, half an hour for me. You get to a part of the river where it gets a little prettier, pine trees, a little faster water, and generally this is where I do the best fishing wise. So I thought I'd give you a glimpse of it. It's a very pretty river to fish. You know, when they said there was a lot of chubs in this river, they weren't kidding. I got 2 flies and I got 2 chubs. So hopefully I'll get into some trout soon, but anyway, we'll see what's around see what's in Lower Fish Creek these days. I stand corrected. Those 2 fish that I thought were chubs, I pulled them in. They were actually 2 small brown trout. Still had their parr markings on them. So anyway, that's good news. Let's see what happens. Bring up a little close-up of this fish. They're small, but at least there are some trout in the river, so that's good. Hopefully we'll get in some one's a little bigger than this, but it's nice to see that it's not all chubs, that there are some trout in here. Show you another view of Lower Fish Creek. It's a pretty river. You know, the only way to get down here is you follow the railroad tracks. There's about 7 miles of railroad track, and it goes along the river. It's nice and peaceful and quiet, except for maybe once or twice a day when the train rolls by. But other than that, it is a beautiful place to fish. Picked up a chub. This is the first one I've caught today. Everything else I expected to catch a lot of these, but been fishing for well over an hour now, and this is the first chub I've caught, so maybe there's not quite as many in here as there used to be. So the last fish I'll show, and see what they're pretty browns, but I don't know if these are all planters or, because everything I've been catching today, as far as browns, there's a lot of them, but they all are fairly small fish, pretty little guys. But hey, just wrapping up the day here on Lower Fish Creek. Had a really interesting day today. Caught a lot of brown trout, but they're all small, planter size. Probably landed, gosh, well over 20, I would imagine, today. Did run into a few chubs, but not nearly as many as I had feared that I would end up catching today. So that was kind of nice. I didn't see many of them like they have been here in the past. Last year the river was black with them in some places. I didn't get any big trout, so I was hoping to get some big brown or rainbow trout. Everything I caught was smaller. Interestingly enough, the first fish I caught, I had 2 fish on a double nymph rig. I thought they were chubs, but when I finally brought them in to take them off the hook, by gosh, they were small trout. And that's kind of the way the day went. Just a lot of small trout, 20 plus, couple of chubs. Anytime I'd get in a deep hole and I'd start catching chubs, I'd just move and go somewhere else. Size 14 gold beaded Prince nymph was the key. By far the best fly today. Caught probably 80% of the fish on that. The rest, gosh, there were 5 or 6 different flies I was kind of fooling around with that I caught fish on, but that was by far the best fly today. Anyway, it was a great day. Nobody else on the river. There were 2 guys here at the parking lot when I came in, and they fished right here in the water by the parking lot, and I was the only one on the river today. Walked down a couple miles and saw not a soul. So it's a beautiful place to fish. Hope you get a chance to get out here. I know there's some big fish here. I didn't catch any today. I guess in the famous words of Bobo from Finding Bigfoot, all I can say is, they're real, I've seen them. Have a great week and go fishing.